It has been 7 months since I've uploaded a YouTube video. So what have I been doing? Sleeping, hanging out with my cat. I slammed my finger in a door. Don't judge my nails, I had a very bad gel manicure experience. I read books. I watched lots of horror movies, YouTube videos, and documentaries. I had multiple existential crises on trying to understand and fight Instagram and TikTok's algorithm, and failing, and making my screen time actually horrifying. So I decided to come back to longer form video content. And to celebrate, let's talk about some of my favorite horror movies I've watched so far in 2024. Also, if you've never seen my face before, my name is Crystal. I'm just a horror fan who talks about horror movies on the internet. I upload new videos every single Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To beat the Sunday scaries, talking about scary movies. In no particular order, first is Longlegs. Oh, the discourse around this film on the internet. Also, this is not me. Nor is this one. So if you didn't already know, Longlegs follows an FBI agent who uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree. The film stars Micah Monroe and Nick Cage and was written and directed by Osgood Perkins. Did you know that Osgood's father is Anthony Perkins, aka Norman Bates? So when the director was asked about contemporary horror, Perkins told The Hollywood Reporter he doesn't watch any of it. He said, "On the one hand, I want to identify or atone with the father by going down the same path and representing the good name in the genre in question. But then, I also have a sort of distaste for it," Perkins explains. "I wouldn't say I'm someone who likes or dislikes horror movies. I don't see new ones. I have no interest. I'll never see MAXXXINE. I'll never see Pearl. I saw X for reasons. It wasn't on purpose. I don't see contemporary things. They don't interest me at all. And that's not to say that they aren't great. I'm sure they are great and make a lot of people happy, which is all that really matters. But I like the horror genre because it's the genre that permits the most invention and it encourages the most poetry. It's all guessing and grasping at what is essentially unknowable. And grasping at the unknowable is exactly what Perkins did in Longlegs. The film was announced in November 2022 and the marketing campaign started in January 2023, 6 months before the film was set to release in July. And Perkins gave Neon pretty much free range to do whatever they wanted. And they did. We got pictures, teasers, trailers, an ad in the Seattle Times, and even a phone number to call for a creepy message. So with all that being said, did I like the movie? Yes, I did. It was scary and unsettling. See, I grew up Roman Catholic, and I went to a Catholic school and was taught certain lessons by nuns and priests about the devil and how the devil can trick you into sinning. This grew in fear in me that somehow I was going to get tricked by the devil into sinning. So when it was revealed in Longlegs that Nick Cage's character was a devil worshiper, it brought back all these fears that I had as a child hearing about the devil. Nick Cage's character put a face to what I had feared back when I was a child on who the devil was, what he looked like, and what he could make other people do to each other. Of course, there were things in the movie that I wish they had delved into a little bit more, into like who Longlegs was before the devil tapped him on the shoulder to do all of his bidding. And I wish there was more explanation on the silver balls that were put into the doll's head, but that's just my own curiosity speaking. Next is EXHUMA, and there is just something about Korean horror films that I adore to my core. EXHUMA was written and directed by Jang Ji-hyun. This movie delves into the process of excavating an ominous grave and unleashes dreadful consequences buried underneath. So I don't want to spoil the whole movie for you because it's an experience that you have to have on your own. But I will tell you that there are 2 shamans, a geomancer, and a mortician who deal with ancient evil spirits. They meet a wealthy man who needs help to cure his newborn son. They find out that this newborn has a dark energy around it, and they realize that the eldest grandchild child of the family is cursed. They find the burial location of the wealthy man's grandfather, and it's buried at a very suspicious location on top of a mountain where foxes live, and graves don't belong there. The geomancer warns the others not to dig up the grave for fear of what could be buried deep in the ground. And that's all I'm gonna tell you. I'm not gonna say anything else. I really enjoyed this movie, and I feel like Korean horror films, they really get you attached to the characters, and you're rooting for them to figure out what's going on, and you're hoping that they make it out alive. I also like learning about Korean culture and history, and in the movie, when you think they defeated the big bad thing, they pretty much only scratched the surface. And according to the director, the actors studied real rituals from shamans to accurately portray them on screen. Next is The Devil's Bath. This folk horror setting is set in Austria during the 18th century, and we follow Agnes, who is getting ready for married life with her beloved. But her mind and heart grow heavy with a gloomy path ahead in isolation, and evil thoughts start to arise. The film was written and directed by Savran Fiala and Veronica Friends, and it stars Anya Plash. The filmmakers were also the ones who gave us Goodnight Mommy and The Lodge, so if you've seen either of those films, you can imagine the atmosphere this film will give you. For context, I watched this movie really late at night before going to sleep, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. My suggestion is to watch this movie on a bright, sunny Saturday morning or afternoon, giving you ample time to decompress and shift through the emotions you might feel during and after watching. Just saying. You can do whatever you want though. Without giving too much away, this film is based on real events that happened during the 18th century and the actions of the very devout religious women who lived during that time. The setting for the entire film is dark, isolating, and honestly miserable. There are moments of monotonous scenes, but it all builds up to this final act that left me pretty much speechless. Next is Lowlifes. We follow a road-tripping family who are put to the test when they have no other choice but to stay the night at a remote homestead and use their instincts to survive. It was directed by Tesh Gadagonda and Mitch Oliver, and it was written by Al Kaplan. This film stars Amanda Fix, Matthew McHale, and Richard Harmon. Harmon starred in one of my favorite sequels, Grave Encounters 2, and the AI-themed horror movie Margot. Overall, I really enjoyed this to-be original, and that isn't a sentence that I can say very often. This film had decent gore in it, and a twist that made me go, huh, okay. It has more of this comedic aspect too, which I wasn't really expecting. I liked the characters, even though at times some of the acting was a little bit cringe. With a lot of these backwoods horror movies, there are always two sides fighting against each other. We have the hillbillies, for lack of a better word, versus the city folk. You've seen it in Wrong Turn, The Hills Have Eyes, and House of Wax, but Lowlifes turns that on its head. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical going into this movie, but by the end of it, I was pleasantly surprised. With that being said, I wish the ending was a little bit different, but such is life. So next is The Watchers. We follow a young artist who gets stranded in an extensive, immaculate forest in Western Ireland, where after finding shelter, she becomes trapped alongside three strangers stalked by mysterious creatures each night. It was directed by Aishana Shyamalan, daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, and was written by Aishana and A.M. Shine. Aishana was also the assistant director to her father's film Old. The film stars Dakota Fanning, Georgina Campbell, and Alan Follier. Fanning has done some acting in the horror genre with Hide and Seek and Brimstone. Campbell, on the other hand, starred in Barbarian and was on an episode of Black Mirror. Follier also has had her hand in horror with the newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tarot, and Mandy. So, did I like this movie? No, I didn't. I know that M. Night Shyamalan and his family are known for their twists in their movies, but the twist in this particular movie was silly. But what I did like was the idea of the movie. Taking this bunker setting in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, with unknown creatures coming at night was cool. It had the potential to be something, but fell short when the twist was revealed. I think Shyamalan likes to add in these valuable takeaways from his movies, and his daughter does the same thing. But it was almost kind of cheesy the way that it ended, and I didn't particularly care about the main character, Mina. Another thing to note is that the movie is based on a book by the same name. And what I have gathered, the book is better than the movie. The book is crafted with suspense and character development, whereas the movie does not depict any of that. And the movie twist actually changes a huge part of the book. It's interesting because the part of the movie that I liked was closely to what the book portrayed, and what I didn't like was not in the book. Next up is Horror in the High Desert. In July 2017, an outdoor enthusiast went missing in northern Nevada, and he was never located. Friends and loved ones recall the events and for the first time talk about the horrific conclusion to his fate. It was written and directed by Dutch Morich and stars Susie Block, Eric Menace, and David Morales. This is the first of 3 movies in the franchise, and it's shot found footage style with talking head interviews from the missing person's family, friends, and a reporter. I've always been a big fan of found footage that stemmed from watching the Blair Witch Project, so this movie is a bit of a slow build with a good payoff in the end that makes you want to watch the next one and then the next one. What I really liked about this mockumentary type films is the talking head interviews add to the suspense because they will just like drop a statement with no hesitation. The film reminds me a little bit of like Mungo because you're sitting there and you're listening to an interview and out of nowhere someone will say something that will just like completely throw you off. The film was shot well too. It felt like I was watching like a real documentary on Netflix. And it reminded me so much of the suspicions around the Blair Witch Project and how so many people probably to this day think that it was real. There was even a shot at the end of the movie that caught me totally off guard, and I sat back and I was like, whoa, and then I instantly like skipped back so I could watch it again. Next is MAXXXINE. In 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minks finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. It was written and directed by Ty West and stars Mia Goth, Kevin Bacon, Elizabeth Debicki, and other household names in the movie world. It's the 3rd installment in the franchise of X and Pearl. Right off the bat, this movie is a no for me. Just hear me out. Maxine Minks is a very strong, very independent badass. And Maxine, we didn't really get much of that except for in the back alley scene. We just watched as she walked around Hollywood reacting to things, and Maxine Minks is more of a doer than anything else. She is a fucking star, and in this movie, she came off as kind of secondary. Yes, the soundtrack, the setting, the cinematography were top-notch, and I loved Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth Debicki's characters. Anytime that they were on screen, I really enjoyed it. But to like add in the plot line of Richard Ramirez was a little off to me. I get that he was the Night Stalker during this time, but I just felt like he was portrayed very heavily in the trailers. I liked seeing the Psycho House, but it sort of was like Ty West said, hey, that's cool, let's put it in there. We also never really got to know Maxine's friends in Hollywood. They were just used as pawns for the bad guy, which sucked because I wanted to get to know them. Like the supporting cast in X were fleshed out and we grew familiar with them. And I wanted to love this film because I love X and Pearl. But the story was kind of boring, and the big reveal bad guy at the end, it just wasn't for me. And last but certainly not least is In a Violent Nature. When a locket is removed from a collapsed fire tower in the woods that entombs the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 70-year-old crime, his body is resurrected and becomes hellbent on retrieving it. It was written and directed by Chris Nash and stars Rye Barrett, Andrea Pawlicki, and Cameron Love. I remember when this movie was making its rounds on social media for being ultra gory and over the top with its kill scenes, and well, they were. I also wanted to mention that I really think this is a love letter to horror fans from Chris Nash, the director. At least for me, I can tell that he truly loves the horror genre. Yes, there are cliches, and yes, there are some moments where it feels a little bit slow, but you can tell that he really appreciates this genre. The storyline was simple, and about 90% of the film was from the killer's perspective. And what I have read in some reviews is that some people thought it was boring to watch him just walk through the forest. But what I have to say to that is, what do you think Jason Voorhees is doing? For me, I felt anxious as he's walking through this forest because you never know when someone was gonna cross his path. And it was heightened when you could hear like the leaves and the twigs like snap under his feet. And most times when we watch horror movies, it's from the victim's perspective, but this movie turned it on its head and made us be the stalker in the woods. I didn't really care about the supporting characters because we're not supposed to. They're just pawns for Johnny. We are forced to walk alongside Johnny as he did his bidding, and we picked up pieces of who he was and why he was doing what he was doing. And that's really all the supporting characters are needed for in this kind of movie. I do also remember the yoga scene making its rounds on X, but I have to say the kill that did it for me was the forest ranger. I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, but if you know, you know. Well, if you made it this far, you reached the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching me, Crystal, just a horror fan talking about horror movies on the internet. Till next time.